what was yesterday about? If you can just kind of describe to our readers. I mean, what happened?
Well, I think it was no different really than any other committee hearing with a controversial bill. We took the testimony, we listened, we asked questions, and at the end of the day, we took a vote on whether or not we thought the bill had merit to go to the full body for debate. And it was a very close vote, but at the end of the day, there was 10 folks that felt like it was a bad bill, and 9 that felt like it was okay. And so that's just that's part of the process.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Sure. Right. It's part of the process now. I can describe the bill myself, but if you don't mind, why don't you describe the bill? If in terms of what the original bill that was available or present yesterday.
Yeah, well, the bill we voted on was Senate Bill 284, which is Senator Donahue's bill, which was described as the SAVE credit, and I think it's pretty common knowledge that its existence was to allow for the governor to live up to the Americans for Tax Reform pledge, and so they crafted a very clever bill that basically allows us to raise as much taxes as we want and still say we didn't raise taxes because of this bill. It gave or it provided for the bill itself an assessment that nobody pays because of a credit that nobody gets. And really all it did was transfer money into a fund. And with all those gyrations, the Americans for Tax Reform somehow said, well, this is good. This is a credit, and it's an offset to any taxes you raise. And the question was asked, well, can we do the same thing with royalty taxes and severance taxes and all $8 billion
Sure.
in taxes? And if that's the case, well, then, this isn't a conservative piece of legislation. I mean, this is the most liberal piece of legislation that we've ever been asked to vote on. I just think there was those of us that had serious problems with the fallacy, inherent in the bill, and it just struck a bill that was being done for all the wrong reasons and was unnecessary. If we want to fund higher ed and health care, then let's just trim back the incentives that, like the House did. It's very transparent. It's very clear. The public knows what we did. Some like it, some don't. But, we chose to make those cuts to those incentive programs and invest that money in higher ed and health care and presented it as openly to the public as possible. And the public can judge whether they like what we did or not. But to do all of this, go through all of these other gyrations and that just to try to trick people into thinking that we didn't do what we did just doesn't seem to be the right way to go.
Right. I think you were asking those questions yesterday about maybe it was Representative Johnson.
Yeah.
About whether or not we can do the same thing, say, with the Affordable Care Act. Take the money and then give a tax credit. I mean, basically.
Yeah, Johnson had asked that. Yeah, Johnson asked that.
I mean, basically do that for anything and raise taxes till the cows come home and just call it a tax credit. Is that pretty much?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah, I'm having a difficult time understanding how the Americans for Tax Reform can say that this fits with whatever their requirements are, because it does seem to be the exact opposite of a no tax pledge. It seems to allow for as many taxes as you want pledge, as long as you do this piece of legislation. They seem to be in contradiction of each other.
Sure. So where does it go from here? Ultimately it goes to the full House. Now, it was there were 2 votes at the end, and the second was, I think, to to involuntarily
defer the bill.
So that does not mean that it cannot be brought back up to the House floor. Am I correct, or does it mean that there's additional limitations that you have to jump over, or what?
Yeah, I mean, there's no bill or piece of legislation is ever really dead until we sign and die. I mean, it's there's procedural moves, there's that are allowed for. So there's always the possibility of the bill coming back in some form, in some way. So this was to me a normal step in the process. You give the bill a hearing, you debate it, and then whatever the fate of the bill is, it is, and then people are going to be looking at what procedural moves can be used to try to resurrect it. And so I'm sure a lot of folks were staying up late last night trying to figure that out.
Well, the fact that it was, every vote was 10-9, I believe, and so that means that, and I think it was pretty much, except for three of y'all, three Republicans who voted along with the Democrats. So it seems to me that with 10-9 votes, it can still be, there's still some force behind it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it was a 10-9 vote. It's a close vote. It's a very divisive issue. The people have their reasons for voting for it, for sure. Everything from they just, they want us to get it done in this process and don't want to have to come back for a veto session. I guess there's some that maybe actually believe in it, but maybe probably not. And so, I'm sure the body is equally as divided as the committee was.
Right. Now, perhaps you can take us through this. The other day I wrote a column basically saying, hey, what happens if the governor vetoes the budget, and where does it take us? Have you thought that through in terms of? I mean, obviously, I suspect that if the governor vetoed the budget, then there might be at least an attempt to override. I think that's pretty obvious that there's a stronger attempt. There could be a stronger attempt to do so this year than prior years on any issue. So, but have you?
That's correct.
Okay, so like the other day in the column, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what happens? Okay, so the governor vetoes the legislation, then there is an override session. Can any other issue be brought up? Can for example, do you have to just vote up or down override, or can you then negotiate the budget once again?
No, yeah. If he vetoes and we come into a veto override session, then any bill that has been vetoed is on the table to be overridden. Whether it be the budget, he may have vetoed some other bills that we agree with.
Sure.
But in that session, you're limited. In that veto override session, you're limited to overriding his veto. So you would say, nope, the budget that the House and the Senate agreed to, that we sent to your desk, we're voting on whether or not we're going to override that veto. And then any others. He may also veto the revenue bills and whatnot. So that's one. That's the first step in the process. If for some reason that does not happen, then we would have to either call ourselves into a special session or have the governor call us into a special session to deal with crafting a new budget, which basically means it just be an entirely new session. We'd be starting over. Nothing that we did in this session,
sure,
as it relates to the budget, would carry forward. But it would take, as it relates to appropriating in the budget, it would take a 3/4 vote instead of a 2/3 or a majority vote.
Oh, really?
Yep. Because in the last year, and you'll need to double check me on this, but in the last year, it's my understanding, in the last year of a governor's term, if there's a special session on the budget, it's a 3/4 vote to appropriate money.
Oh, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which means that no one's going to want to go to the special session. So we're either going to work it out here and get it done by Thursday, or we're going to go into an override and just override the government. I mean, because there's very little appetite or confidence that we would be able to come to some agreement where 75% of the body would agree on cuts to higher ed, cuts to health care, cuts to tax incentives, or whatever combination there is. It would be very difficult to get those numbers. I mean, we haven't received those numbers on really anything yet. So, why would it be any different then?
Right. Now, I think Tyler Bridges wrote in his article yesterday that some are arguing that government would shut down. Now, he didn't give it a time period in terms of when that would take place. I mean, obviously, there's enough money in the budget up until July 1, and then after that, I mean, that would be the time. If this is not resolved, that would be the time that all heck breaks loose.
Yeah, but just like in a normal, we end the session on June 11th and things get signed, and if the governor vetoed the budget, that would be the question. What happens come July 1st? Is there, and I don't know, are there emergency provisions in place to utilize whatever revenues are available on some limited basis to keep things operational? Because we don't come in for the veto override, and that's all in statute of 40 days after. So after the end of session. So, that would be whatever, July 21st. So I suspect there's some mechanism that's in place to say that in the event that it's vetoed, but the time between when the session ends, or not the session, the year ends June 30th, and that we are compelled to go into a veto override session, that there's some mechanism in place to provide for government services.
Another executive order.
It could very well be that, yeah.
Oh my God! I
really don't know the answer. I just
know. Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I could see the legal challenges. I mean, like you can have executive order in terms of, say, Hurricane Katrina. But is man-made, executive. That would be boy. Yep. What a mess! Yep. What a mess! And right at a time that. June 24 is the day that the governor is supposed to announce his presidential run, or that he's not going to run for president. So he could announce that, and he would do that before the veto override session could take place. Boy, oh boy, what an interesting summer. I think I'll stay in Louisiana.
Yeah, well, we're still working hard to try to come to some resolutions by June 11th. But we'll see. We'll see if we're able to.
Sure. Well, listen, thank you so much. I know it's a very, very difficult decision. I mean, obviously, I personally appreciate the effort that you're making, and the entire legislature is making during these very, very difficult times. It's not fun. It's not easy, and y'all really acting with respect to one another. And I for one really appreciate that. So thank you so much. Really,
I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right, Steve. Bye.